The penthouse atop Reed Tower glowed like a suspended star above Manhattan, its glass walls reflecting a city that never slept, though inside everything felt unbearably still. Amara Johnson stood in that hush, a single sheet of paper trembling between her fingers. The divorce agreement. Her heartbeat thudded like someone trying to escape a locked room. Maybe she was the one trying to escape. The marble beneath her heels was cold, precise, unforgiving, like the man she had married, or at least the man she thought she had married. Alexander Reed stood at the far end of the open living space, tall, immaculate, in a charcoal suit, despite the late-hour posture straight as a verdict. His eyes, ice gray, cut from winter storms, lifted slowly from his laptop when he sensed her presence. Those eyes had once intimidated her. Tonight, they simply hurt. She placed the divorce papers on the black marble table between them. It looked like an offering, or a funeral. Alex didn't touch them, didn't blink, didn't breathe. "Amara," he said quietly, voice steady but underscored with something fraying beneath. "Just give me one reason." She could feel the emotion he was choking back, and that made it harder. She wished he would just be cold like he used to. She wished she didn't know the warmth in his voice wasn't for the world, only ever for her. That was the problem. That had always been the problem. "We were never in love," she said. Her voice was level, practiced, but inside she felt like she was slicing open her own chest. "We shouldn't pretend anymore." His jaw flexed, one restrained, silent reaction. But for Alex, that was the equivalent of someone else shouting. He took a slow step toward her, then another, each one controlled, sharp, deliberate. She hated that her pulse reacted before her mind did. He stopped so close, she felt the heat of his breath brush her cheek. "You're lying," he whispered. Amara clenched her hands at her sides. "I'm not." Alex reached up, fingers ghosting near her jawline, but never touching. "You can look me in the eye and say you felt nothing. Not one thing in 6 months." She looked him dead on. Not enough to stay. Something shattered behind his gaze, soundless, invisible, but she felt the rippling shock of it. He lowered his hand, and then impossibly, he leaned in. She didn't move. Couldn't move. His lips brushed hers once like a question, then again, like a plea, then fully, deeply, with all the emotion he had never allowed himself to express, all the longing he had buried under contracts and self-control. The kiss was warm, fierce, intoxicating, an anchor, a storm, a confession he didn't speak aloud. Amara's breath caught. For a heartbeat, she let herself drown in him. His heat, his desperation, the taste of regret, and something dangerously close to love. Then she yanked herself back and broke the kiss, chest rising in uneven breaths. "Alex, don't," he murmured, eyes darkened, voice rough. "Don't walk away from something real. It's not real," she forced out, though. Her lips still tingled, traitorous and warm. He stepped back at last, the air between them stretching thin and electric. "Fine," he said, but the words sounded like it cost him something vital. "If you want out, I won't drag you back." He turned away, shoulders rigid, as if any crack might split him in two. "But don't expect me to act unaffected. I don't break quietly." Amara swallowed, the bitter ache rising in her throat. "I'm not asking you to." "You are," he said, still turned away. "You just don't realize it." She could have argued, should have. Instead, she picked up her coat, walked to the elevator, and forced herself not to look back as the doors slid shut. The next morning, Manhattan buzzed with a new scandal. Alexander Reed, the man whose private life was sealed tighter than Fort Knox, walked onto a national business talk show. Cameras pointed at him like weapons. Reporters waited for his usual glacial composure. But Alex wasn't composed. Not today. His tie was looser than usual, the tension in his shoulders unmistakable. The host smiled with calculated warmth. "Mr. Reed, there are rumors about changes in your personal life. Would you like to comment?" Alex inhaled slowly, exhaled even slower. "Yes," he said. "I would." The studio fell silent. The city fell silent. Amara, watching from her small office at the newsroom, felt her breath snag. "I'm currently in the process of divorcing my wife." He said it cleanly like a business fact. But the cameras caught the shift in his eyes, gray darkening depth, collapsing inward, a flash of vulnerability he hadn't meant to reveal. A wound exposed. A man bleeding behind a tailored suit. The host blinked, startled. "We're sorry to hear that." Alex tilted his head, offering a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Are you—" The host stumbled over his next words. "Is everything all right?" "No." Alex didn't hesitate. "It isn't." Amara's hand froze over her keyboard. He could have denied it, spun it, ignored it. Instead, he exposed himself, something he hated more than anything. "But we'll handle it privately," he finished. "Or at least, I'll try to." The segment ended. The world erupted. And Amara's phone began vibrating non-stop. She turned it face down, then face up, then back down. She didn't know what she wanted, or what she dreaded. She only knew one thing: Alex had never looked at another woman the way he looked at her last night, like he was memorizing a heartbreak, or trying to stop one. And she hated that the memory of his kiss was still burning through her, like a brand she couldn't wash off. That night, rain slicked the windows of her apartment, streaking the city lights into molten gold. Amara couldn't concentrate on her notes, couldn't drink the tea, cooling beside her, couldn't stop replaying the way Alex had said "my wife" on television, as if saying the words hurt him, as if losing them hurt more. She shut her laptop with a sigh. Soft footsteps echoed in the hallway. A knock. Two. Then silence. Her breath hitched. She knew that knock. She opened the door. Alex stood there, damp from rain, gray eyes sharper than the storm behind him. No suit jacket, no armor, just a man stripped of the walls he always hid behind. "We need to talk," he said. His voice wasn't cold. It wasn't calm. It was wrecked. Amara's pulse jumped. "Alex, we said everything already." "No." He stepped closer, rain dripping from his hair chest, rising with restrained emotion. "We didn't say the truth." She swallowed hard. "The truth is we don't work." "The truth," he interrupted, "is that I haven't slept since you walked out." Her chest tightened painfully. "That's not my responsibility." "It is," Alex said softly, "when you're the only person who's ever made me feel anything real." Her heartbeat thudded, loud and disobedient. "Alex, you want to leave," he whispered. "Fine, but tell me one thing before you go." He leaned down enough that his breath grazed her skin, his voice a storm wrapped in silk. "Tell me that last night's kiss meant nothing to you." Her lips parted. No words came out. His gaze darkened with devastation and something else she couldn't name. "That's what I thought," he murmured, stepping back only half an inch, as if tethered to her. "I can handle losing a marriage. But losing you—" His voice broke there just slightly enough to shatter her composure. "I don't know how to do that, Amara." She felt the world tilt, felt the truth clawing up her throat, felt the gravity of him pulling her in the way he always did. She wanted to say something, anything, but all she managed was a whisper. "Don't make this harder." He exhaled sharply, a sound between a scoff and a plea. "I'm not the one making it hard. You are." And then so quietly she almost didn't hear it. Because deep down, you know this isn't over. Her breath trembled. We already filed. A divorce doesn't erase what you feel, he said. Or what I feel. Feelings can fade, she argued. Not mine. His eyes pinned her in place. And not yours either. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain pressed against the windows like a heartbeat. And then Alex stepped back slowly, painfully, like a man forcing himself to walk away from something he still wanted desperately. He slid a hand through his wet hair. Get some sleep, Amara. He turned toward the elevator, voice rough as gravel. Because I'm done pretending I don't want you. The doors closed behind him with a soft metallic click, but the sound echoed through her chest like a detonator. And for the first time since she handed him the divorce papers, Amara wondered if she had made a mistake that neither of them would recover from. And somewhere across Manhattan, Alex Reed stood alone in his penthouse, staring at the divorce papers he had not yet signed. Not because he couldn't, but because something inside him refused to let her go. Not yet. Not ever. Rain fell over Atlanta like a punishment, sharp, cold, relentless. Thunder crawled across the night sky as Amara Johnson stepped into the old Ward house, the place that had never truly been home, just a holding cell, dressed up as a childhood. The floorboards groaned under her heels, the scent of stale cigarette smoke clinging to the walls, as if the years had never passed. Linda Ward sat at the dining table, fingers stained with nicotine, eyes glittering with a mix of bitterness and triumph. Without a word, she reached for a worn cardboard box and dumped its contents across the table. Photographs slid across the wood like accusations. Amara as a child, bruised, tiny, terrified. Amara in a hospital bed with an IV taped to her hand. Amara signing papers with hands barely big enough to hold a pen. Adoption documents covered in whiteout and forged signatures. Amara felt the air squeeze from her lungs. What is this? She whispered, though a part of her already knew. Linda leaned back, crossing her arms with an expression that wasn't maternal, wasn't even human, just cruel. The truth, she said. The truth you've been pretending didn't exist. Amara lifted one of the papers, her adoption file. The dates were scratched out, names altered, money withdrawals highlighted. Blood rushed in her ears. You changed the documents. Linda laughed, a rasped, ugly sound. We didn't change them, girl. We bought them. The room tilted. Bought you. Linda snapped, slamming her palm against the table. $5,000. That's what you cost us. Amara felt her legs weaken, but she forced herself to stay standing. You told me my birth parents abandoned me. They did. Linda shrugged. Just after we paid them. Lightning flashed, throwing cruel shadows across her face as she leaned forward, voice sharpening. You owe us your whole damn life, Amara. Every meal, every roof, every breath. The disgust rising in Amara's throat almost choked her. You never gave me anything out of love. It was all a transaction. Linda smirked. So what? Life is a transaction. And you marrying Reed, that was the biggest payout we'd ever get. She snatched up the divorce paper Amara had signed. But now, you're ruining everything. I'm not responsible for your greed, Amara said, though her chest trembled with 1,000 emotions. Anger, betrayal, grief, she never allowed herself to feel. I'm not your investment. The hell you aren't. Linda stood, stepping so close Amara could smell the sour alcohol on her breath. If you leave Alexander Reed, their family cuts us off. No more protection. No more political favors. No more money. Do you want to destroy us? Ruin us? You ruined yourselves. Long before I left, Amara whispered. Linda's eyes flared with something dark. Ungrateful. After everything we did for you. What exactly did you do? The question came out sharper than intended, but it was too late to pull back. Linda's face twisted. We raised you. You exploited me. Amara corrected, voice trembling. You used me. You hurt me. We saved you. Linda shouted, spit flying. Without us, you'd still be rotting in that godforsaken orphanage. Amara swallowed, trying to keep her voice steady, even as her hands shook. Maybe, but at least I wouldn't be trafficked like property. Linda slapped the table again, veins bulging. If you divorce him, the Reed family will bury us. Is that what you want? To watch us lose everything? Amara stared at the photos again. Her small, helpless self. The girl, no one protected. The child, no one truly loved. She wasn't sure when the tears began falling, silent, steady. But Linda noticed and scoffed loudly. Look at you, crying like some victim. Grow up, Amara. Something inside her snapped, a thread pulled too tight for too many years. She gathered the photos, shoving them back into the box. Her voice came out soft but firm. I'm done letting you use me. Linda's laugh came out shrill. You think that rich white boy's gonna protect you? Please. Once he's bored, he'll toss you aside like trash. Amara felt her heart clench at Alex's name, but forced herself to keep steady. My marriage is not your business. Your marriage was our ticket, Linda shouted. And you ruined it, just like you ruin everything. Amara closed the box, pushing it away. I'm leaving. You walk out that door. Don't come back. I wasn't planning to, she whispered. She left the house before Linda could spit another word. The rain swallowed her whole. What? The flight back to New York was quiet, her mind echoing with every word Linda had hurled at her. She wasn't sure if she was numb or burning. Maybe both. By the time she stood outside Reed Tower, night had fallen again. The building's glass exterior shimmered like a blade. Her hands trembled as she lifted them to her face. She couldn't even tell if the wetness on her cheeks was rain or tears. She didn't expect to come here. She wasn't sure why she did. Instinct, reflex. A desperate need she didn't want to name. All she knew was that her legs carried her to the person she wanted to push away and run toward at the same time. She almost turned back. Almost. But the elevator opened, and her feet betrayed her. She stood in front of the penthouse door, soaked, exhausted, her heart in pieces. She didn't knock. She simply stood there, unsure if she even had the strength to lift her hand. The door opened anyway. Alexander must have seen her through the camera. And then he was there. Tall, intimidating, beautiful in that crisp, devastating way he always carried himself. But when he saw her face, saw the redness around her eyes, the dampness on her lashes, something in his expression shifted, softened, broke. Amara. He breathed, as if her name alone shook the ground under him. Who did this? His voice was low, dangerous, the kind of quiet that hid a storm. She looked away, wiping her cheek quickly. It's nothing. Don't lie to me. His hand lifted hesitant before he gently cupped her jaw, tilting her face toward him. His touch was warm, tender, protective in a way that made her chest ache. Your eyes tell me everything you won't. Amara almost fell apart at that. Alex, please. He studied her face with a depth that felt like drowning. Tell me who hurt you. No one, she forced out. I just had a long day. Long days don't shatter a person like this. His thumb brushed a raindrop, or was it a tear from her cheek? The intimacy of the gesture made her breath catch. Amara, you don't have to carry whatever this is alone. His voice dropped to a whisper. Let me in. She pulled back instinctively, breaking the contact. though her skin still burned where he touched her. I can't. I shouldn't be here. Why not? The question came out sharp with raw emotion. She exhaled shakily. Because I'm leaving. For good. Alex froze. Just for a second. But that second felt like the world cracking. His voice was rough when he spoke. You came here. Not to your friends. Not to your coworkers. You came to me. Her heart twisted painfully. That was a mistake. Is it? He stepped closer, not touching her, but she could feel the heat radiating from him, pulling her in like gravity. Or are you terrified, because you know I'm the only person you've ever trusted with your pain? Her breath faltered. Don't do this. Do what make it harder. Alex exhaled slowly, and when he spoke again, his tone was heartbreakingly gentle. Amara, look at me. She did, against her better judgment. His eyes were no longer icy, just full of worry, anger, and something deeper, something she couldn't name without her voice breaking. Whatever happened tonight, he said, whatever they did, they don't get to define you. She swallowed the old ache rising again. Maybe they already did. No, he said firmly. They don't get to claim you. They don't own you. They never did. His words were so sure, so solid that for a moment she wanted to believe him, wanted to collapse into him and let him hold her up. But she couldn't. Because if she did, she wasn't sure she'd ever be able to walk away again. Alex, she whispered, stepping back. I can't stay. His jaw clenched, but his voice remained soft. I won't force you. But his eyes screamed, don't go. She shook her head, turning toward the elevator. Good night. Amara, he called, and when she paused, he added quietly, painfully, you don't have to suffer alone. She didn't answer. The doors closed between them, but his voice, his warmth, the way he touched her face, they followed her long after she disappeared into the night. And for the first time since signing the divorce, Amara wasn't running from her marriage. She was running from the only person who made her feel safe enough to fall apart. And Alex Reed, alone in the doorway, watched the elevator descend and whispered to himself, whoever hurt you, I will find them. Everything had just changed. She wasn't the only one with ghosts now. He had a reason to fight, and no intention of losing her again. The gala shimmered under a halo of golden lights, the kind of event where everyone smiled too widely, drank too quickly, and whispered too sharply behind champagne glasses. Reed Global Media's annual Innovation and Influence Summit was meant to be a celebration of future tech new partnerships and polished public images. It was not meant to be a battlefield, but it became one the moment Sophie Miller walked in. She made her entrance the way a storm sweeps across an unsuspecting coastline. Quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. Her blonde hair cascaded down her shoulders in curls, too perfect to be accidental. Her lips, a bold red slash against porcelain skin, and her white satin dress clinging to her with the precision of a designer intent on causing chaos. Cameras followed her like she was gravity, and she basked in it. The whispers started before she even crossed the room. Is that Sophie Miller? Didn't she and Reed? I thought she was still in London. God, she looks incredible. And then, like a predator scenting its prey, her eyes locked onto Alexander Reed standing near the stage, speaking with a panelist. She didn't hesitate. She walked toward him with a confidence that bordered on entitlement, the room parting around her like the Red Sea. Alex noticed her only when she was a breath away. But before he could step back, before he could say a word, she slid her arms around him from behind and pressed her cheek against his shoulder. Alex. She purred loudly enough for the cameras. I missed you. Flash, flash, flash. A dozen cameras captured the moment, her arms around him, her face smug, his expression unreadable in the glare of the lights. If someone paused the right frame, they would see that Alex didn't even raise a hand to touch her back. He was stone, ice, utterly still. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. By midnight, the photos had made their rounds across the internet like wildfire. By morning, they were everywhere. Amara saw the picture on the cracked screen at the corner convenience store in Soho, where she had stopped for a quick coffee between assignments. She wasn't even looking for news about him. She was trying not to. Yet there he was, caught in Sophie's arms, face half turned, the scandalous implication plastered across a dozen headline thumbnails. CEO Reed reunites with his beautiful blonde ex-sources. Say marriage to Amara Johnson was a mistake. Did Alex Reed leave his wife for Sophie Miller? She stared at the screen too long, the coffee machine humming beneath her hand. Her chest tightened, not with surprise, not even with pain, but with a strange hollow ache, as if someone had scooped out part of her rib cage and left emptiness behind. But she didn't cry. The tears she had shed in Atlanta had been enough for a lifetime. The clerk asked if she was okay. Amara smiled small and practiced. I'm fine. She paid for her coffee and left. The lie tasted burnt at the back of her throat. She spent the rest of the day at the studio, editing footage, reviewing interviews, drowning herself in work, with a desperation she didn't want to examine. The photo kept flashing in her mind anyway. Sophie's arms, Alex's stillness, the crowd's stares, the whispers. It clawed at her even when she tried to ignore it, especially because she knew the truth. Alex would never have allowed it. Not willingly. He hated being touched without consent. He hated theatrics. He hated being dragged into headlines. Yet the photo looked damning. And the world never cared about nuance. By the time evening settled over the city, she had convinced herself she was overreacting, that it didn't matter, that she had no right to care. They were divorcing. They were done. She repeated the words like a spell to protect herself. They didn't work. At 9:17 p.m., the studio door slammed open, hard. Amara flinched, spinning around. And there he was, Alexander Reed, in a black coat still dusted with rain, eyes blazing like a storm that had finally decided to break. She didn't even have a time to speak before he crossed the room. In 3 long strides, grabbed her wrist, not painfully, but firmly, and pulled her toward the stairwell at the back of the studio. Alex. Not here. His voice was clipped, dangerous. He pushed open the heavy door to the emergency stairwell, the echo swallowing the room behind them. The moment it clicked shut, he pinned his palm against the wall beside her head, not touching her, but close enough she could feel the heat radiating off his body. His breathing wasn't steady. At all. Did you see it? He asked, low and controlled in a way that meant he was anything but. Amara forced neutrality into her tone. If you mean the photo, yes. And nothing. His jaw tightened. Nothing. You looked happy, she said simply. It was a lie, but she needed it to be true so she wouldn't crumble. I'm glad you're moving on. Alex's hand slammed into the wall next to her head with a force that made the metal railing rattle. Don't, he said sharply. Don't pretend you believe that. She swallowed, refusing to retreat even as her pulse pounded. Why not? You didn't exactly push her away. I did, he snapped, breath shuddering. But the cameras caught the one frame where she grabbed me. Amara opened her mouth, then closed it. He stepped closer, his chest brushing hers with every frustrated inhale. Do you think he said quietly for even 1 second that I would touch her, or anyone, when all I can think about is you? The confession struck her like a blow. Her voice wavered. I don't know what you think about anymore. No. His face inched closer, his eyes burning. Then, let me clarify. His fingers brushed her wrist, gentle now, coaxing rather than pulling. I didn't go to that event for her. I didn't know she'd be there. And when she touched me, his breath ghosted her cheek. All I wanted to do was leave. Her heart stuttered painfully. Alex, look at me. She did, and it ruined her. Because in his eyes, she found no guilt, no deflection, only anger that she believed the world over him and hurt that he couldn't hide, and something deeper that threatened to swallow them both. You think I moved on? He whispered. You think I want anyone else? She forced air into her lungs. We're getting divorced. We're separated, he corrected sharply. Not divorced. The papers are filed. They're not signed. Does that matter? It matters to me, he said, voice dropping to something raw enough to sting. And if it didn't matter to you, you wouldn't be standing here shaking. She stiffened, but he noticed. He always noticed. Amara, he murmured softer now, fingers lifting to lightly trace her jaw. Tell me you didn't care when you saw that picture. She stayed silent. His thumb brushed her lower lip feather light. Say it, he whispered. Tell me it meant nothing. She couldn't. Not when her pulse was betraying her. Not when his proximity made her dizzy. Not when her heart reacted to him, the way it never reacted to anyone else. I'm not doing this with you, she whispered, stepping aside. I don't have the energy. But Alex caught her hand, not tightly, not possessively, but with a plea. Don't run from me. She froze. His voice softened further. Sophie coming back isn't the problem, he said. The problem is you think she matters to me. He stepped around her, placing himself between her and the exit, the way one might block someone from walking into traffic. She doesn't. His eyes held hers with devastating honesty. But you do. Her breath faltered. Again. Always. Alex, please. I'm jealous, he admitted in a whisper so quiet, she almost missed it. I'm jealous because the world thinks I chose her. His thumb brushed her knuckles, sending a shiver up her arm. I didn't. His gaze moved to her mouth, then back to her eyes. I choose you. The words wrapped around her like a dangerous promise, a dangerous truth. And Amara hated how deeply she felt it. You don't get to choose me, she said softly. Not anymore. He flinched, subtle but real. But I do, he murmured. And I will, until you stop choosing me back. I'm not choosing you. Then why are you trembling? She pulled her hand free, breath uneven, the stairwell suddenly too hot, too small, too intimate. Because you terrify me, she whispered. Alex stepped back, not far, but enough to give her air. Enough to show he heard the truth in her voice. Enough to steady himself. Good, he said quietly. Because losing you terrifies me too. For a moment, neither moved, neither spoke. The stairwell hummed with fluorescent lights and unspoken truths. Finally, Amara opened the door. Before she could walk out, Alex said behind her, I'll fix the Sophie situation. She paused. You don't have to. I know, he said, but I want to. She didn't turn around. Couldn't. Good night, Alex. He exhaled softly, painfully. Good night, Amara. When the door shut between them, the echo lingered like a heartbeat. Neither of them knew how to silence. And somewhere on the floor above Sophie Miller was already plotting her next move. Because the picture had done exactly what she wanted. It had lit a fuse between Amara and Alex. What she didn't know was that the fuse wasn't leading toward destruction. It was leading toward fire. A fire neither of them would be able to extinguish. Empire Weekly's newsroom pulsed with its usual chaos: phones, ringing, reporters shouting across desks, screens glowing with breaking headlines. But somehow the noise felt sharper than usual, like static scraping across Amara's nerves. She had just finished reviewing the exclusive interview she'd crafted for weeks. A piece she had poured every spare second into something she hoped would prove she was still herself, still capable, still unbroken, despite the unraveling mess of her personal life. But as she clicked her mouse, expecting to review her files, her screen flashed a red alert: file not found. She frowned, heart-stopping, for a fraction of a second. She checked the backup folder, then the autosave, then the external drive she carried everywhere. All gone. Her fingers trembled as she typed faster, digging through hidden folders, caches, anything. Nothing. Not one trace. As if the entire project had been vacuumed out of existence. And then the message appeared on the newsroom TVs. Empire Weekly had just released an emergency statement. Our exclusive interview has leaked. Amara's blood turned icy. She rose from her chair legs, unsteady heartbeat thundering. Around her, whispers whipped like knives. How did it get out? Who had access? This could bankrupt us. This was supposed to be our issue seller. Someone sabotaged the secure database. That's a federal crime. Who worked on it last? Silence. Dozens of eyes turned to Amara. She felt them like needles piercing her skin. Her editor barreled out of his office, red-faced, breath-heavy anger radiating off him. Johnson. His voice cracked like a whip. In my office. Now. She followed him inside, shutting the door behind her. You want to tell me? He growled, tossing a stack of printed, leaked pages onto the desk. Why, your exclusive interview is all over the goddamn internet. I don't know how this happened, she whispered. Someone must have hacked. Someone. He scoffed. This was an internal steal. No one outside had access, which means someone inside did this. I didn't leak it. Can you prove that? She opened her mouth, but no words came. She couldn't. She didn't even have the file anymore. Someone had wiped it so thoroughly, it almost mocked her. Her editor leaned back, hands pressed to his temples. Look, I liked you. I vouched for you when other people said you were too new, too involved in your domestic drama. She bristled, but he continued. But this leak cost us 6 figures. Sponsors are furious. Legal is involved. This is a disaster. Her throat tightened. I didn't do it. Then you won't mind taking responsibility. She stiffened. Why would I take responsibility for something I didn't do? Because we need a name. The finality in his tone struck her like a slap. And you, he added quietly, are the easiest one to blame. The words should have broken her. Instead, they hollowed her out. Pack your things, he said. You're done here. Amara pressed a hand to her chest, as if to hold her heart together. You're firing me. Effective immediately. She stared down at the floor. After everything I've done for this place, your keycard will be deactivated in 20 minutes. Security will escort you out. That was it. Her career, her reputation, her last foothold of stability. Gone. She left the office on legs that felt borrowed, each step mechanical. As she reached her desk, she caught a flicker of blonde hair disappearing around a corner, too familiar, too deliberate. Sophie. A sickening realization rippled through her. Sophie had done it. Sophie had stolen the file. Sophie had leaked it. And no one would ever believe Amara, because Sophie already had the world eating from her manicured hand. Amara's hands trembled as she packed her few belongings into the small carry-on she had brought for late-night shifts. A coffee mug, her notepad, a worn pen she refused to replace because Alex had given it to her months ago, back when the marriage still felt like a possibility. She stopped. No. She wouldn't think about him. Not now. Not when everything else was falling apart. Security approached their polite but stiff expressions, making everything worse. "Ms. Johnson, if you'll follow us." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. The walk through the newsroom felt like an execution. She kept her chin lifted, refusing to let them see how close she was to breaking. Outside, the sky had cracked open. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, turning the city into a blur of headlights and reflections. Amara stepped onto the sidewalk and pulled her coat tighter, but the rain seeped through everything, her clothes, her skin, her bones. She didn't hail a cab or call a ride. She just walked. The wheels of her small suitcase bumped along the soaked pavement, water splashing her ankles. She didn't care. People rushed past with umbrellas and coats pulled up to their ears, but she moved like she was underwater, numb and drifting. Her hair clung to her face, mascara smeared clothes plastered to her body. She must have looked like heartbreak walking. Every step felt heavier than the last. She wasn't sure where she was going. Not home. She didn't want to fall apart in a place she once shared with him. Not a friend's house she didn't want to explain. Not anywhere, really. Just away. Away from the humiliation. Away from the betrayal. Away from the pain pressing against her ribs like it wanted to break out. A horn blared as a car splashed water near her feet, and she stumbled back only to realize it wasn't a random car. A black SUV stopped in front of her with a sharp, commanding precision she knew too well. The back door opened. She froze. Her breath hitched, and then he stepped out. Alexander Reed, coat thrown over his shoulders, shirt damp from the rain, eyes scanning her like he was seeing something no one else ever bothered to look for. The bitterness lodged in her throat suddenly tasted like ashes. She tried to step back. He closed the distance in 2 strides. "Amara," he breathed, voice shaking with something that didn't match his usual composure. "Get in the car." She let out a laugh, sharp, humorless. "What, you're here to rescue your pathetic ex-wife?" His jaw clenched. "Don't do that. Do it, pretend you don't need shelter." He reached out and held the umbrella above her head, shielding her from the rain even though he himself was drenched. Water streamed down his temples onto his collar, down the sharp line of his jaw. She folded her arms tightly. "Why are you here?" His eyes darkened. "Because you didn't answer your phone. And I saw the news." She looked away, throat burning. "So what? It's not your problem. It is when you're walking in the rain alone with a suitcase." "I'm fine. You're shivering. That's what rain does." He exhaled hard, the sound halfway between a groan and a plea. Slowly he draped his coat over her trembling shoulders, the warmth startling against her cold skin. The gesture was gentle, tender, devastating. She shoved it back at him. "Alex, stop. Amara, we're divorcing. And I'm still me." She forced a laugh to mask the ache inside. "Trying to be noble, trying to keep you from breaking," he corrected softly. She stiffened. "You don't get to care." "I do," he murmured, "and I will." "Why?" she demanded, voice cracking. "Why do you keep doing this?" "Because I can't watch you fall apart," he said, stepping closer, rain dripping down his brow. "Not you." Her breath tangled. "I'm not yours to worry about anymore." His jaw tightened, eyes flashing with anger he couldn't contain. "Divorce doesn't shut off how I feel. It doesn't turn me into a stranger. It doesn't make me indifferent." The world went strangely quiet. Rain falling, cars passing, people shouting. But none of it reached her through the pounding of her heart. He cupped her arms gently, thumbs brushing lightly against her soaked sleeves. "Amara," he whispered, voice breaking, and she had never heard it break before. "I will always care." The words fell between them like a vow and a wound all at once. The city seemed to pause, traffic, raindrops, time itself holding its breath. Amara did too, because for one fleeting second, She wanted to fall into him, to let him lift her out of this nightmare, to let herself be held, to let herself believe. But she couldn't. Not when everything else in her world had been yanked away. Not when trust felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Her voice was barely audible. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" he asked, stepping closer. "Because they make it harder." His expression softened so painfully she almost lost her balance. "Then, let me be the one who makes it easier." A lightning flash illuminated the street, casting him in stark, breathtaking light. Tall, soaked, unwavering, his coat still warm on her shoulders. She swallowed. Hard. "Alex," she whispered. "Let me go." His eyes closed for one agonizing second. When he opened them again, something fierce flickered behind the hurt. "No," he said quietly, a vow wrapped in gentleness. "I'm not letting you walk alone tonight." Her breath stopped, completely. And despite the storm raging around them, despite the cars splashing water across the curb, despite the cold stabbing through her bones for just one heartbeat, the world stood still. Because he meant it. Every word. And she had no idea how to survive a man who cared for her as if she were still his wife, even when she no longer wanted to be. Or maybe terrifyingly, when she still did. San Francisco's fog wrapped around the city like a ghost that refused to leave, clinging to the edges of streetlights and drifting through the narrow alleys as if drawn to her. Amara Johnson walked through the heavy mist toward the archives, building the air thick with salt and cold. She had come here with a single purpose, a purpose she had tried to ignore her entire life. But now that everything else had been stripped from her, her job, her dignity, her illusions, the truth was the only thing she could still chase. She had requested access to the Ward Orphanage's historical files, a process so bureaucratically tedious that she wondered if fate itself wanted her to stay ignorant. But the clerk eventually granted her temporary access to the sealed storage room in the basement. The air smelled like dust, bleach, and old sorrow. Rows of metal filing cabinets stretched into the dimness, labeled with years' case numbers, names of children who had been forgotten by everyone except the ghosts lingering in these drawers. She found her file tucked in the back of a cabinet labeled 19X, 99XX, almost as if someone had tried to hide it. The folder was thin, too thin, as if everything had been taken out of it except what someone wanted her to see. A tremor rippled through her hand as she opened it. The first sheet was a faded invoice, $5,000 USD child transfer. For a moment, Amara stared at the numbers as if they were written in a foreign language, something incomprehensible, unreal. But they were real. She traced the digits with her thumb, the bold strokes of the amount, the cold indifference of the term transfer. Then her gaze moved to the signature at the bottom. Linda Ward. Her chest constricted so violently she had to take a step back, bracing herself against the cabinet. She flipped to the next page, fraudulent medical reports, stating she had minor injuries from accidental falls, each one stamped, each one initialed. Lies. Lies meant to erase her pain. Lies meant to absolve the Wards of wrongdoing. The forged adoption document followed. Her birth date falsified. Her family's details blacked out. The ink smeared, as if someone had tried to change it multiple times. And then tucked inside a yellowed envelope, a statement from a former staff member recorded years earlier. Yes, there was an exchange. The child was sold. We were told to keep quiet. Amara's breath vanished. Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the edge of the table to stay upright. Her pulse roared in her ears. Sold. She had been sold. Not chosen, not saved, not adopted, purchased. A commodity. A transaction. Just like Linda said. But hearing it in Linda's voice was one thing. Seeing it laid out in official records was another. It hit harder, crueler, truer. Memories she tried to bury clawed their way up cold hospital walls. The sting of disinfectant, a woman screaming in far-off rooms, hands that held her too tightly. Nights she cried until her chest hurt because no one came. And suddenly, it was all too much. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth as a sob tore out of her raw and painfully quiet. Another followed, then another, until she was sinking to the floor amidst metal drawers and abandoned lives, her tears blurring the evidence of her own childhood being stolen from her. She cried until her throat burned, until her lungs ached, until she felt hollow and heavy all at once. When she finally stumbled out of the archives building, night had already fallen. The fog had thickened, swallowing buildings and headlights muffling the world like a blanket she couldn't lift away. She walked back to her small apartment, clutching the documents to her chest, as if they might disappear if she let go. Every step felt like walking through wet cement. By the time she reached her place, the tears had dried into brittle salt trails on her skin, but her eyes still stung as if they'd been scraped raw. She went inside, shut the door, locked it, and collapsed onto the floor with the folders sprawled around her like the debris of a bomb. Her breath came in staggered bursts. Her hands shook without stopping. She didn't know how long she sat there. Minutes, hours. Time didn't matter. Pain did. A soft knock interrupted the darkness. She froze. No one knew she was here. No one should have known. The knock came again, gentle, hesitant, almost afraid of being too loud. Her chest squeezed painfully. She pushed herself up, legs trembling, and cracked the door open. On the other side stood Alexander Reed, coat unbuttoned, hair tousled, breathless, as if he had been running. His eyes widened the moment he saw her face. "Amara." His voice broke. She opened the door, fully unable to speak. Without waiting for permission, Alex stepped inside and shut the door behind him, his gaze scanning her red eyes, her shaking hands, the scattered documents on the floor. "What happened?" His voice was a whisper, but the fear inside it was sharp enough to cut. She shook her head, eyes burning again. "Alex!" But the words lodged in her throat, refusing to come. He crossed the room in seconds, stopping only when he was right in front of her. "Amara," he murmured, cupping her elbows gently. "Talk to me." But the moment she opened her mouth, the sob she'd been swallowing escaped, breaking her voice in half. She turned away, covering her face, ashamed of letting him see her like this, so exposed, so broken, so small. And yet, he was there instantly, wrapping his arms around her from behind, pulling her back into his chest, with a tenderness that undid her completely. His embrace was strong, steady, certain everything she wasn't in that moment. She collapsed into him, her tears soaking into his shirt, her fingers gripping his arms, because she needed something, anything to hold on to. He rested his chin on her shoulder, his breath warm against her neck. "Amara, don't cry anymore," he whispered, voice thick with pain that didn't belong to him, and yet he felt it. Felt her. Felt everything she tried so hard to hide. She shook her head helplessly. "I can't." "You can," he murmured. "Not alone." His arms tightened, grounding her, anchoring her. "I'm here." She let out a trembling breath, leaning back into him fully. His warmth seeped into her bones, quieting the tremors, soothing the ache in her chest, in a way she had never allowed herself to want. He held her like someone terrified she might disappear, like she was something fragile and precious, like she mattered. "Alex," she whispered, voice cracking. "They sold me." His entire body tensed around her. He closed his eyes, forehead pressing into her shoulder, as if the weight of her words punched the air out of him. "Oh God," he whispered. "Amara." She wiped her eyes, but the tears kept spilling. "My whole life, everything I thought was true. It was all a lie." He turned her gently to face him, hands sliding up to cradle her cheeks, his thumbs brushing away tears as they fell. "Listen to me," he said softly, fiercely. "Your past doesn't define you. What they did to you, those disgusting people, it has nothing to do with your worth." She shook her head. "It feels like everything I am is just damage." "No," he said, voice breaking. "You are strength. You are fire. You are everything they could never destroy." She squeezed her eyes shut. "I don't know how to move forward from this." He leaned his forehead against hers, breath mingling with hers, grounding her in the most intimate, vulnerable way. "If your past hurts too much," he whispered, "then let me be your future." Her breath hitched. "Alex, don't." "Why not?" "Because you don't love me." The words shattered between them, painful and jagged. His eyes softened. Hurt, yes, but something deeper too. He brushed a damp curl from her cheek fingers, trembling ever so slightly. Then he leaned in his lips, grazing the shell of her ear. "Amara," he murmured, voice so quiet it melted straight into her skin. "I love you more than I know how to say." Her knees almost gave out. She froze, breath stopping, heart stumbling into a wild, desperate rhythm. "You're lying," she whispered. He shook his head slowly, his hands still cradling her face. "I've loved you in every silence," he said, "in every argument, in every moment I failed to say it. I love you in the ways I look at you, the ways I panic when you're hurt, the ways I can't sleep when you're gone." Her throat tightened painfully. "Alex, I love you," he repeated, pressing his forehead harder to hers, his voice cracking open. "I love you to the point that it terrifies me." Her breath trembled against his. "Then why? Why now?" "Because you're hurting," he whispered, "and I don't want you to mistake my silence for indifference ever again." A sob escaped her, and when she tried to turn away, he pulled her back into his arms, holding her against his chest, as if he were trying to keep her together with sheer will alone. She let herself fold into him. Let the warmth of him seep into her cold bones. Let the steady beat of his heart anchor her to something real, something safe, something that felt like home. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was falling alone. And Alex held her as if he had been waiting his entire life to catch her. For the first time in days, sunlight poured into Amara's San Francisco apartment, thin early morning light that painted her living room in soft gold, as if trying to erase the heaviness lodged behind her ribs. She sat at the small kitchen table with a cup of tea she could barely taste, her eyes red from the previous night's tears. The folder of devastating truths still spread across the coffee table like open wounds. She should have felt steadier. She didn't. Every breath still felt like glass inside her chest. But she wasn't alone today. Hiram Banks knocked exactly at 9 a.m., punctual as always. When she opened the door, his smile was the warmest thing she'd seen in days. "Morning, Amara," he said gently, stepping inside with an energy that softened the edges of everything sharp. Hiram was tall, taller than Alex even, and dressed in a dark navy suit that managed to look both expensive and effortlessly comfortable on him. He had the kind of presence that filled a room in the gentlest way, not with dominance, not with arrogance, but with a quiet calm that wrapped around you like a reassuring hand on the shoulder. His deep brown eyes settled on her face, the fading redness around her eyes, the exhaustion in her posture. "You didn't sleep," he observed softly. She shook her head. Not really. Then today he said, I'll handle the heavy lifting. Amara let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Thank you. You don't have to thank me, he said, waving the words away as if they offended him. After what they did to you, this is the least I can do. They spent the morning reviewing documents, tracing timelines, compiling evidence. Every time the more painful pages appeared, the falsified medical report, the transfer invoice, the signature she had spent a lifetime wishing were affectionate instead of transactional. Hiram slowed down, giving her space to breathe, to steady herself, to not drown. He didn't hover. He didn't push. He simply stood beside her like a pillar, solid and warm. When she lost her place in the pages, because her hands trembled, he gently laid his own large hand over hers, grounding her. Hey, he murmured, you're safe. They can't hurt you anymore. Something in her chest twisted gratitude, yes, but also a quiet ache she didn't want to examine too closely. By noon, they were at the NF legal office, preparing to sign official affidavits. Cameras flashed outside, press, still sniffing for stories after the leak scandal. But Hiram handled them with ease, shielding her behind him, one hand on the small of her back. And for once, Amara didn't feel hunted. She felt protected. When they finished, he walked her down the courthouse steps, rain clouds gathering overhead again, as if following her from New York to San Francisco. He offered her his hand as they descended the last few steps. Instinct made her hesitate, but his expression softened. Let me help, he said quietly. Just today. Something inside her gave in just a little. She placed her hand in his. His palm was warm, his hold steady. The world didn't tilt or collapse under her feet. It simply felt easier. I've got you, he murmured. And for the first time in a long time, someone did. What neither of them knew was that Alexander Reed had arrived at NF earlier than expected. He had flown in without announcing it, ignoring calls, skipping meetings, leaving chaos behind in New York, because he had only one goal: to see her, to make sure she was okay, to hold her again if she let him. He stepped out of the elevator into the glass-walled lobby, just as Hiram guided Amara toward the exit, his hand still gently enclosing hers. Alex stopped mid-step. His eyes darkened instantly, storm gray, sharp as a blade drawn too fast. He watched Hiram's hand. He watched how comfortably Amara let herself be supported. He watched how Hiram looked at her with concern, with warmth, with something dangerously close to tenderness. And something snapped quietly inside him. Not shattered, no. It cracked. A slow, deep, irrevocable crack. When Amara and Hiram disappeared through the glass doors, Alex didn't move, didn't breathe. A receptionist approached nervously. Mr. Reed, would you like? No, Alex said, voice dangerously calm. I'm fine. He wasn't. Not even close. That evening, after Amara finished her final recording session for the day, she headed toward the NF parking garage, exhausted, emotionally drained, but hopeful that maybe, just maybe, she was regaining a sense of control over her life. She didn't expect him to be there. But Alex stood in the shadowed corner of the garage, leaning against her car, arms, crossed eyes gleaming with a storm she felt before she even saw him. A chill rippled through her. Alex. What? Where were you? He asked, voice low, steady, too steady. Instinctively, she straightened her spine. Working. With him. Her heartbeat kicked. His name is Hiram. I don't care what his name is. You should, she replied sharply. He's helping me. He's helping himself, Alex bit out. Helping himself to you. Amara felt heat rise to her cheeks, not embarrassment. Anger. Alex, you don't get to decide who helps me. You think I don't see it. Alex stepped closer, the sound of his shoes echoing against the concrete. The way he looks at you, the way he touches you. He doesn't touch me. He held your hand today. She froze. He had seen. He had watched. You followed me. No, he growled. I showed up, and I saw him get to you first. A slow, dangerous breath left him, and it killed me. The confession slashed through the tension like a blade. Amara swallowed. Hiram was supporting me. You think I wouldn't have? He cut in, voice sharp with something deeper than jealousy. You think I wouldn't tear apart the world for you if you asked? Her pulse stumbled. Alex. But he stepped closer, close enough that she felt the heat radiating from his body, close enough that her breath caught painfully. Did he touch you? The way he said it, low, possessive, wounded, made her chest tighten. Alex, you have no right. I have every right. His hand came up, hesitating for a fraction of a second before gently, almost desperately, curling around her wrist. I always have. Her breath hitched. Alex! Because I love you, he said, voice hoarse, raw, stripped bare. I love you, and the idea of another man holding you makes me insane. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her pulse. You can't say things like that. Why not? He whispered. Why can't I tell you what's been ripping me apart? Because we're divorcing. We're in limbo, he countered. We're broken, she corrected. Not beyond repair. He murmured, his forehead nearly touching hers. Not if you just let me, Alex, stop. But her voice trembled, and his eyes caught it instantly. Did you want him to touch you, Amara? He asked quietly. Too quietly. Her breath caught. That's none of your business. It is, he said. Everything about you is my business. That's not fair. I don't care about fair. He pressed her back gently until her spine met the cold concrete wall, not trapping her, just grounding her, keeping her from drifting away from him again. His breath brushed her cheek. I care about you. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure he heard it. Alex, look at me, he murmured. She did, and in his eyes she saw everything. He never said. Fear, longing, anger, vulnerability, love, fierce enough to burn. Tell me, he whispered. Tell me you felt nothing today when he held your hand. She tried. She really tried. But the words wouldn't come. Her silence stung him. She saw it. She felt it. He exhaled a sound so quiet and broken, it made her chest ache. He lifted a hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His palm cupped her jaw, thumb brushing the corner of her mouth. I'm losing you, he whispered, and I don't know how to stop it. Her eyes softened, despite herself. Alex, I can't watch someone else take care of you, he said, voice cracking. I can't watch you lean on someone who isn't me. He stepped closer, his forehead touching hers. I want to be the one you turn to, the one you call, the one you trust. She closed her eyes, breathing him in warm, familiar, devastating. You're asking for something complicated, she murmured. I'm asking, he whispered, because I love you. And this time, when she didn't step back, when she lowered her gaze, unable to deny the tremor that went through her, he understood. Her silence was not rejection. It was fear. It was conflict. It was hope, trying to claw its way out of ruin. Her silence was the first crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. A crack he intended to widen slowly, gently, completely. Amara, he murmured, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. Tell me, I still have a chance. She couldn't say yes, but she didn't say no. And for Alexander Reed, that silence was the first breath of hope he'd felt in months. The storm that ended Sophie Miller's career didn't begin with thunder. It began with quiet Amara sitting alone in the NF office, piecing through files Hiram had pulled, each document opening another window into the truth Sophie had spent years burying. Digital footprints of plagiarism tracing back to lesser-known journalists in Europe. Screenshots of messages Sophie had sent to junior media staff, threats, dressed as flirtation coercion, masked as career advice. Off-the-record accusations, hidden behind NDAs, she had weaponized to silence the people she exploited. And then the worst of it, a financial trail showing Sophie had siphoned PR funds into her personal accounts using fake consulting invoices. When Amara brought the evidence to the NF board, they didn't believe her at first, until she laid out everything in chronological order. Every screenshot, every bank transaction, every message Sophie thought she had erased, but hadn't. Silence filled the boardroom like smoke before a fire. One director leaned back slowly, eyes wide. "My God, this is enough to bury her." Another whispered, "This is criminal." A third added, "And it was all happening under our noses." Amara felt no triumph, only exhaustion. When the investigation went public 2 days later, Sophie's world combusted. Headlines shifted from attacking Amara to crucifying Sophie. Sophie Miller, exposed for plagiarism scandal. Models accuse Sophie of harassment. Behind closed doors. Financial crimes under review. Miller's PR empire collapses overnight. Her sponsors abandoned her. Her management dropped her. Journalists dug into her past, discovering patterns of manipulation that stretched years. Sophie went from being the media's darling to its favorite target in less than 24 hours. She tried to spin the story on social media, cried on camera, claimed she was being framed, blamed the jealous wife for orchestrating a vendetta. But the world wasn't buying it anymore. The comments turned vicious. The sympathy vanished, and for the first time in her life, Sophie faced consequences. Amara didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate. She simply closed her laptop, sat back, and let herself breathe. A slow, shaky breath that felt like something heavy had been peeled away from her chest. But freedom came with its own burdens. Because exposing Sophie meant stepping back into the spotlight right when she wanted to disappear. And the biggest spotlight of all was just hours away. The National Media Excellence Ceremony took place at the Hudson Grand Hall in New York, an enormous structure of marble floors, chandeliers, dripping like liquid stars, banners flowing in gold and white. Cameras flashed at every entrance. Journalists lined the red carpets. Celebrities posed and performed false perfection with effortless charm. Amara wasn't invited. She had no reason to attend. Yet when she arrived, dressed in a simple black dress, Hiram insisted she wear. Hair brushed back, face calm as cold water. She felt the weight of 100 stares follow her surprise, slicing through the crowd. She wasn't here for attention. She was here because NF wanted her present to represent the investigative team that brought Sophie down. And they wanted the story to be closed in the place where Sophie once thrived. But as Amara walked through the hall, the weight of something else settled around her too, a heavy electric tension pressing against her skin. She knew why. He was here. Alexander Reed, her almost ex-husband, her almost future, her almost everything, stood backstage, preparing for a keynote speech that would be broadcast to millions. She hadn't seen him in 3 days. Not since that moment in the NF garage when he had asked her, begged her to tell him whether he still had a chance. And she had stayed silent. Not because she didn't want him, because she didn't know how to survive loving him. Because love from someone like him came with a gravity that could crush her if she wasn't careful. She lingered at the edge of the hall, heart pounding, as the presenter announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, Please welcome to the stage, Alexander Reed. Applause erupted like a wave. The lights brightened. The air shifted. Alex stepped onto the stage with the poised confidence that had made him one of the most powerful men in the country. But there was something different in his posture tonight, something tense, driven almost reckless. His gray eyes swept across the crowd, sharp and searching, until they landed on her. And everything inside him changed. The audience quieted as he approached the podium. The cameras zoomed in. He adjusted the microphone, jaw tightening for a split second, before he said in a voice that carried through the entire hall, "Before I speak about media transparency tonight," his eyes didn't leave her, "I need to make something else transparent." A murmur rippled across the room. People shifted in their seats. Alex ignored them all. "There has been speculation," he continued, "about my past relationship with Sophie Miller." Amara's breath caught. She wasn't the only one. Several audience members whispered urgently. "Let me be clear," he said slowly, distinctly, "so there is no room for misunderstanding." His gaze sharpened into a blade. "I never loved Sophie Miller." The room stilled. Cameras zoomed closer. Some gasps scattered across the hall. But Alex didn't stop. His voice deepened, calm, unwavering, carefully controlled but vibrating with emotion. "The woman I love is Amara Johnson." A hush fell so complete that even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. Flashlights exploded like fireworks. Journalists froze mid-sentence, their jaws dropping. Some audience members turned to stare at Amara, eyes wide. But she didn't move. She couldn't. Her body felt suspended between shock and disbelief, heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. Alex continued, expression softening, in a way she had only seen in private moments, moments that felt stolen, fragile, too beautiful to belong in the real world. "I have loved her," he said, "for longer than she has ever known." Another wave of murmurs rolled through the hall. "She is the strongest person I've ever met." Alex went on, voice thickening with emotion he didn't bother to hide. "She rebuilt herself from trauma the world never saw. She exposed the truth when others ran from it. She holds herself with dignity, even when others try to tear her apart." His throat bobbed once, as if the next words were heavier than the rest. "And I am endlessly proud of her." Amara felt something hot sting her eyes. "No, not here, not now." She blinked rapidly, forcing the tears back. Alex drew a slow breath and stepped away from the podium, moving to the front of the stage. The cameras followed him like he was gravity. He wasn't speaking as a CEO anymore. He was speaking as a man stripped of ego, stripped of pretense, stripped of everything except truth. "Amara," he said, his voice carrying through the hall, as if the entire world had gone silent just to hear him. "You keep running." He paused, gaze locked on hers. "But I won't." Her chest tightened. He continued softly, "I will walk toward you." Again and again. His eyes shone with something deeper than longing, something fierce, relentless, consuming. "Until you turn around and meet me halfway." The hall fell utterly still. No breath, no whisper, nothing. Only silence, thick, stunned, electrified silence. Amara's fingers trembled at her sides. Her heart hammered so violently she thought everyone could hear it. Heat pulsed behind her eyes again, too raw, too real. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. All she could feel was the weight of his gaze wrapping around her, like an embrace from across the room. He had just demolished every wall she had built, in front of the nation, in front of the industry, in front of her. Her breath clipped as she swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. She had expected a speech, but not a confession that felt like an earthquake tearing through her guarded heart. He lowered the microphone, hands tightening once at his sides, an involuntary gesture, as if his own emotions were threatening to spill. And she felt her world shift, tilt, fall. Something inside her cracked, not a wound, but a door. A door she had been afraid to open, a door that now stood ajar. Because for the first time, she believed him. And that belief, terrifying, exhilarating, fragile, was enough to take her breath completely away. The news broke at sunrise, painting New York in shades of pale gold and sirens. Linda Ward had been arrested, charged with child trafficking, fraud, extortion, multiple counts. Her mugshot spread across every screen in the city. Her lipstick smudged, her expression twisted with fury, her carefully crafted lie of motherhood dismantled in a single morning. Amara watched it happen. From the small living room of her San Francisco apartment, her hands clasped together so tightly, the knuckles turned white. She expected to feel victorious. She expected some swell of justice or vindication. Instead, she felt released, like someone had finally unknotted the rope that had been around her throat since childhood. She stood there for a long time, watching the headlines scroll beneath Linda's face. Woman arrested in decades-long infant trafficking scheme. And she breathed. Really breathed. For the first time in years, her lungs didn't ache. When her phone buzzed, she didn't have to check the screen to know who it was. "Pack a bag," Alex's voice said softly. "I'm taking you home." She didn't argue. She arrived at Reed Tower at dusk. Manhattan glowed with 1,000 lights that sparkled like champagne against the sky. She stepped out of the elevator onto the private rooftop terrace, expecting cold wind and the familiar city hum. Instead, she froze. The entire rooftop, every railing, every corner, every pathway, was blanketed in red roses, cascading from planters draped across archways, blooming in clusters around soft lanterns that cast warm circles of light on the stone floor. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't subtle. It was overwhelming, almost absurd in its devotion. She blinked, breath catching. "Alex, what is all this?" He stood across the terrace, hands in his pockets, looking almost shy, which was impossible for a man like him. But tonight, he wasn't the cold, powerful CEO the world saw. Tonight, he was just a man in love, completely, recklessly, helplessly. He stepped forward slowly, eyes never leaving hers. "You said once that red was your favorite color," he murmured. "So, I grew a garden for you." Her heart pulled painfully and beautifully at the same time. She walked toward him, the scent of roses surrounding her like a warm embrace. "This is insane," she whispered. "Red suits you," he said softly. "And I wanted you to walk through something beautiful on the day you get your freedom back." Her throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. She didn't need to. Alex moved closer, reaching for her hand. His touch was warm, steady, grounding, pulling her back to him in a way words never could. "Amara," he said quietly, "I know what today means. I know what you lost. I know what you finally got back." She nodded once, feeling the sting behind her eyes again. "This isn't about me," he continued. "It's about you taking back your life, your name, your truth." She exhaled shakily. "It feels like everything's finally quiet." "Good," he whispered, brushing his thumb across her fingers. "Because I want you to hear what comes next." Before she could speak, he dropped to one knee. Time stopped. Her breath disappeared. Alex looked up at her with eyes full of a tenderness she didn't think he was capable of showing so openly. "The first time I married you," he said softly, "I did it because of expectation, obligation, duty." He swallowed emotion, thickening his voice. And I will regret that for the rest of my life. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. He took her hand more firmly, his thumb brushing slow circles into her palm. But this time he whispered, I want to marry you because I love you. Her lips trembled. Her chest tightened with something deep and overwhelming. Amara Johnson, Alex said, lifting a velvet box and opening it to reveal a ring carved with a single deep red ruby, surrounded by a halo of small diamonds. Will you marry me again this time, the way you always deserved? A laugh bubbled from her chest, tangled with a sob. She covered her mouth with her free hand, shaking her head. Alexander Reed, she whispered, her voice breaking. You are impossible and a menace. He smiled faintly, eyes softening. I'm only difficult with you. That made her laugh again, a soft, breathless sound that felt like pieces coming back together. She took one step closer, then another. Alex rose slowly from his knee as she slid her hands up to his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. His breath hitched. Her eyes shimmered. Yes, she whispered. I'll marry you. For a moment, he just stared at her, like the words didn't make sense, like he wasn't sure he heard them right, like hope had been burning so quietly inside him that the sudden flare felt unreal. Then he inhaled sharply and swept her into his arms. Not roughly, not possessively, but like a man who had been dying of thirst and finally tasted water again. She melted into him, her hands clutching his shoulders as he held her so tightly she felt the tremor in his breath. Amara, he whispered against her hair, his voice raw, reverent, almost breaking. You have no idea. She pulled back just enough to see his face. His eyes were full of emotion, fear, relief, wonder, love. She cupped his jaw gently. Show me. And he did. Alex lowered his mouth to hers, tender at first, almost hesitant, like he was afraid she might vanish if he kissed too deeply. But she leaned in, closing the last sliver of space between them, her fingers curling into the back of his neck, and something inside him shattered beautifully. The kiss deepened, slow, then urgent, then fierce, with everything they had survived. Rain clouds drifted above but didn't open. The city lights shimmered below, like constellations scattered across Manhattan, and the rooftop garden of red roses held them in a cocoon of warmth as their kiss turned into a vow neither needed to speak aloud. Her lips parted against his breath, mingling the world, narrowing to the taste of him, the feel of his heartbeat pounding against her chest, the way his arms wrapped around her, like he had finally found home. She didn't pull away. He didn't loosen his hold. They kissed, like destiny had pulled them back into orbit. Two people who had broken, healed, fallen apart, and somehow found their way back to each other. When they finally slowed, foreheads touching, breaths trembling in the cool night air, Alex whispered, "No conditions this time." She nodded. No contracts, no deadlines, no distance, no fear, he added softly. Her chest tightened with emotion too big for words. "Just us," she whispered. "Just love," he murmured. And with that final whispered truth, they kissed again, slow, sweet, and sure. A kiss that sealed not just a promise, but their fate. They remarried 3 months later. No press, no cameras, no board members. Just 2 rings, 2 vows spoken under warm spring sunlight, and 2 hearts that had been battered by life, but still somehow refused to give up on each other. And this time, it wasn't duty. It wasn't survival. It wasn't expectation. It was love. Real, raw, reckless, healing. The kind of love that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that doesn't break. The kind that saves.